What if I told you that a single 8-second voice message could destroy 3 lives forever and expose the darkest secrets of Middle Eastern royalty? What if that same message would become the evidence that sent a man to prison for life while tearing apart one of the most powerful families in the Emirates? Have you ever kept a secret from someone you love? Have you ever discovered something on your partner's phone that completely shattered your world? Maybe you found old messages, photos that weren't meant for you, or evidence of a life they never told you about. That sinking feeling in your stomach, that moment when everything you believed crumbles. Can you remember that feeling? Well, today's story takes that universal experience and pushes it to the most horrific extreme possible. Because when Malik ibn Rahman discovered his new bride's secret on their honeymoon in the Maldives, his reaction didn't stop at heartbreak or even divorce. It escalated to something so brutal, so calculated, that it would shock even the most experienced investigators. This isn't just another crime story. This is about how jealousy, royal politics, and wounded pride can transform an ordinary man into a monster. It's about how a talented Lebanese architect named Zahira became trapped between 2 worlds, her family's traditional expectations and her own desperate need for authentic love. And it's about how one voice message from her former lover, the brother of an Emir, would cost her everything. Comment below if you've ever had to keep a devastating secret from someone close to you, because after hearing Zahira's story, you'll understand why some secrets are worth dying for, while others become the weapon that kills you. But here's what really gets me angry about this case. If you're someone who values truth in relationships, you need to subscribe to this channel right now, because stories like this could literally save your life. I'm not being dramatic, I'm being real. The warning signs that Zahira missed are the same ones that millions of women ignore every single day. And if my content can help even one person recognize danger before it's too late, then every single subscriber matters. So buckle up, because we're about to enter the glittering world of Dubai's elite, where luxury yachts hide forbidden affairs, where royal bloodlines mean everything, and where a woman's mistaken love became her death sentence. This is the story of Zahira al-Qayyim, the bride who died for loving the wrong man first. 19 months before her name would become whispered in Dubai courtrooms, Zahira al-Qayyim was living her best life in the cloud-covered mountains of Beirut, Lebanon. This wasn't your typical Middle Eastern village story. Zahira was different. She spoke 3 languages fluently, held an architecture degree, and her sketches were actually published in professional journals that most of her conservative relatives had never heard of. While her cousins were getting married and having babies, Zahira was designing buildings. While they were gossiping about neighbors, she was posting Instagram photos of Ottoman arches and sunrise views from her rooftop studio. She had that rare combination of traditional beauty and modern ambition that made her family both proud and nervous. But here's where things get interesting, and I want you to pay close attention because this detail becomes crucial later. Zahira's social media started changing. Those architectural sketches and mountain sunrises were slowly being replaced by photos of supercars and luxury yachts. Not photos she took from magazines or Pinterest. These were real photos, taken by her, of vehicles that cost more than most people make in a lifetime. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I want to see how global our community is, because Zahira's story proves that ambition and danger know no borders. Those cars and yachts belong to men from the Gulf states, specifically the Emirates. Zahira had started expanding her world beyond Lebanon's borders, attending architecture conferences and trade shows across the Middle East. She was networking, building connections, chasing opportunities that simply didn't exist in her mountain village. Her family loved this version of Zahira, the successful daughter who brought honor to their name. Her mother would brag to neighbors about her architect daughter who traveled to Dubai and Abu Dhabi for business. Her father felt vindicated for supporting her education when other relatives questioned why a girl needed so much schooling. But what her family didn't know, what nobody back home could have suspected, was that Zahira was playing in a league far more dangerous than architecture. She wasn't just attending conferences and networking events. She was catching the attention of men whose names appeared in newspapers, whose families controlled oil revenues, whose personal decisions could affect international relations. Zahira was smart, beautiful, and ambitious. She had that magnetic combination of innocence and sophistication that made powerful men notice her across crowded rooms. When she spoke about her architectural designs, her eyes lit up with genuine passion. When she laughed, it was the kind of laugh that made men want to give her the world. What Zahira didn't realize was that her talent and ambition had put her directly in the path of Middle Eastern royalty. And in that world, women like her were either protected or destroyed. There was no middle ground. See, in the Emirates, there are two types of women in the lives of powerful men: the wives chosen by families for political alliances, and the women chosen by the men themselves for passion. Zahira was about to discover which category she fell into, and the answer would cost her everything. But here's what really gets me fired up about this case. Zahira represented so many young women today who are trying to build careers and chase dreams in male-dominated industries. She was doing everything right. Getting educated, being professional, networking strategically. She should have been a success story. If you've ever been a woman trying to make it in a tough industry, or if you know someone who has, this next part of Zahira's story is going to hit different. Because what happened to her at that Abu Dhabi architecture fair would change the entire trajectory of her life, and ultimately end it. The Abu Dhabi International Architecture Fair was supposed to be just another networking event for Zahira. She was representing her firm at a modest booth, showcasing her latest designs for sustainable residential complexes. Day 2 of the conference, around 3 p.m., she was explaining her blueprint for a mixed-use development when a shadow fell across her presentation table. Your approach to integrating traditional Arabic elements with modern functionality is remarkable. The voice was cultured, confident, and when Zahira looked up, she found herself staring into the eyes of Jalil bin Arman. Not that she knew who he was at first, just that he was clearly important. His tailored suit probably cost more than her monthly salary. His entourage of advisors hung back respectfully, waiting. Other exhibitors were stealing glances and whispering. Jalil wasn't just another wealthy investor browsing the fair. He was the younger brother of the Emir, a man whose cultural investment projects had reshaped the artistic landscape of the Emirates. At 34, he had a reputation for brilliant strategic thinking and ice-cold business decisions. But standing there studying Zahira's sketches, he seemed genuinely impressed by her work. "I chair the Emirates Cultural Development Initiative," he said, still examining her designs. "We're always seeking fresh perspectives on urban development that honors our heritage." That conversation lasted 3 hours. By the time the fair closed that evening, Jalil had invited Zahira to dinner to discuss potential collaboration opportunities. By dessert, they were talking about art, literature, travel, everything except business. By the time he walked her back to her hotel, Zahira knew she was in trouble. If you've ever fallen for someone completely wrong for you, someone who represented everything you shouldn't want but couldn't resist, hit that like button right now. You'll understand exactly what Zahira was feeling that night in Abu Dhabi. The next 6 months became a masterclass in forbidden romance. Jalil would fly Zahira to private meetings that had nothing to do with architecture. Rental villas in Dubai Marina where they could disappear for entire weekends. His yacht anchored off Fujairah, where they'd watch sunsets and talk until dawn about dreams neither of them could pursue publicly. Jalil was everything her mountain village boyfriends had never been: worldly, intellectually stimulating, dangerously sophisticated. He understood her architectural vision and encouraged her ambitions. He made her feel like she could conquer the world, like her dreams were not only valid but inevitable. But here's what made this affair so intoxicating and so dangerous. The secrecy itself became part of the thrill. Every meeting was covert. Every text message was immediately deleted. Every touch felt stolen. Jalil insisted on these precautions not out of shame, but out of necessity. His world operated by rules Zahira barely understood. "We must be invisible," he told her during one of their yacht meetings. "Not because what we have isn't real, but because it's too real for them to allow it." The them he referred to were the power brokers who controlled royal marriages like chess pieces. Jalil's romantic life wasn't his own. It was a political tool, a diplomatic opportunity, a strategic asset. Every royal marriage served multiple purposes: strengthening alliances, securing trade agreements, maintaining regional stability. Zahira understood this intellectually, but emotionally, she was falling hard for a man who could never truly be hers. And Jalil, despite his reputation for calculated coldness, was falling just as hard. Their affair lasted 8 months of stolen moments and secret communications. 8 months of believing they could somehow make it work despite the impossible odds. 8 months of Zahira learning to live a double life, respectable architect by day, royal mistress by night. If you're still watching, comment royal secret, because I need to know you're ready for what happens next. This story is about to take a turn that will show you exactly how dangerous it can be to love someone whose life belongs to other people. Because while Zahira and Jalil were playing house on yachts and in rental villas, forces beyond their control were already moving to tear them apart. The political marriage that would end their affair was being negotiated in palace halls neither of them had access to. And when that news reached Jalil, his response would destroy Zahira's heart and make her vulnerable to the man who would eventually destroy her life. The end came without warning on a Tuesday morning in March. Zahira was in her Beirut studio, sketching modifications to a hotel project, when her phone buzzed with a voice note from Jalil. She smiled before pressing play. His voice messages had become her favorite part of each day. But this message was different. His tone was flat, formal, completely unlike the warm intimacy she'd grown accustomed to. "Little star, our time has ended. Forgive me. 8 seconds. That's all it took to demolish 8 months of stolen happiness." Zahira played the message 17 times that first day, analyzing every inflection, searching for hidden meaning that simply wasn't there. She called him repeatedly straight to voicemail. She sent text messages that remained unread. She even considered flying to Dubai to confront him, but her pride held her back. What she didn't know was that Jalil was already trapped in negotiations he couldn't escape. The Emirates and Qatar were finalizing a massive infrastructure partnership worth billions, and his marriage to Sheikha Maryam Al Thani had become a non-negotiable component of the deal. His family had given him exactly 48 hours to end all distractions and prepare for the engagement announcement. Have you ever had someone you loved just disappear from your life without explanation? Someone who went from texting you good morning every day to treating you like you never existed? Drop your thoughts in the comments because what happened to Zahira next is something too many women can relate to. For 3 weeks, she barely functioned. Her architectural projects suffered. Her mother found her crying over breakfast without understanding why. Her friends watched her transform from confident and glowing to hollow-eyed and fragile. The woman who had been sketching luxury developments just months earlier could barely draw straight lines. The cruel irony was that Jalil's silence hurt more than any explanation would have. At least an argument would have given her something to fight against. The voice message gave her nothing but questions and the devastating certainty that she had meant less to him than she'd believed. This is exactly when Malik ibn Rahman appeared in her life like a rescue boat to a drowning woman. He was everything Jalil wasn't: available, sincere, completely focused on her. When Malik's family approached Zahira's parents through traditional channels, proposing marriage with all the proper customs and ceremonies, it felt like salvation. Zahira's mother was thrilled. Her father saw it as an honor. Malik's distant royal connections meant their daughter would have security and status. Her relatives buzzed with excitement about the prestigious match. And Zahira? She was so emotionally shattered that Malik's straightforward devotion felt like exactly what she needed. No secrets, no hidden agendas, no political complications. Just a quiet, respectful man who wanted to build a simple life with her. The proposal came just 6 weeks after Jalil's voice message. Zahira said yes not because she loved Malik, but because she desperately needed to feel wanted again. She needed to prove to herself that she was worth choosing, worth keeping, worth marrying publicly instead of hiding away like a shameful secret. That decision would cost her everything. Malik ibn Rahman was everything a traditional Middle Eastern family could want for their daughter. 32 years old, soft-spoken, financially stable, and distantly connected to the Al Ra'den ruling family, a smaller emirate that bordered Dubai. He had heard about the brilliant Lebanese architect through family connections and had been quietly interested for months. Unlike Jalil's dramatic yacht meetings and secret rendezvous, Malik's courtship followed every proper protocol. He sent representatives to speak with Zahira's father. He presented formal letters of intent. He provided financial documentation proving his ability to support a wife. Everything was transparent, honorable, and completely above board. Zahira's parents were absolutely delighted. After months of watching their daughter waste away from some mysterious heartbreak they couldn't understand, here was a solution that solved everything. A respectable marriage, financial security, and restoration of their daughter's happiness. "He's perfect for you," her mother insisted, showing off the formal proposal documents. "Quiet, responsible, devoted. He'll give you stability." Stability. The word felt foreign to Zahira after months of emotional chaos. Part of her was genuinely grateful for Malik's straightforward approach. No games, no secrets, no political complications. Just a man who wanted to marry her publicly, proudly, with full family support. But here's what nobody recognized at the time, including Zahira herself. When you're emotionally devastated, desperate gratitude can feel like love. When someone offers you everything the person who hurt you couldn't provide, you convince yourself that's what you actually wanted all along. Malik visited Lebanon 3 times during their 2-month engagement. He was unfailingly polite, bringing gifts for her parents, asking thoughtful questions about her architectural work, listening patiently to her ideas. He seemed genuinely interested in her ambitions and supportive of her career goals. Comment if you've ever said yes to something when your gut told you no. Because looking back, there were warning signs that everyone missed. The first red flag was his reaction to her social media. Malik suggested she delete photos from her previous life, the yacht shots, the luxury car images, anything that showed her socializing in Dubai's elite circles. "Fresh start for both of us," he explained reasonably. It seemed romantic, not controlling. The second warning sign was more subtle. Malik asked detailed questions about her time in the Emirates. Not casual interest, methodical questioning about where she'd stayed, who she'd met, which events she'd attended. When Zahira kept her answers vague, he pressed harder. "I just want to know everything about the woman I'm marrying," he said with that gentle smile. Their wedding at the Madinat Jumeirah was absolutely magnificent. 300 guests, traditional Lebanese and Emirati customs beautifully blended, a reception that cost more than most people's houses. Malik glowed with pride throughout the ceremony, constantly taking photos of Zahira, showing her off to every guest. Zahira looked stunning. Her guests described her as marble still and regal, though they mistook her tension for grace. The truth was, she felt like an actress playing a role she hadn't quite mastered yet. If you believe women deserve better than being treated as political pawns or consolation prizes, you better subscribe to this channel right now, because I'm about to show you exactly how quickly stability can become a prison. During the reception, several important Dubai officials approached Zahira about potential opportunities with the Royal Planning Office. Her architectural reputation had preceded her, and marriage to Malik had opened doors she'd never expected. For a brief moment, she felt genuinely hopeful about this new chapter. That hope would last exactly 5 days, until their honeymoon in the Maldives, where Malik's true nature would finally reveal itself in the most horrific way possible. The Conrad Maldives Rangali Island Resort was absolutely paradise on earth. Zahira and Malik's overwater villa stretched out into crystal-clear turquoise lagoons, with glass floor panels that revealed tropical fish swimming beneath their feet. Private infinity pool, personal butler service, and complete isolation from the outside world. Exactly what newlyweds should want. For the first 4 days, everything seemed perfect. They snorkeled together in coral gardens that looked like underwater cities. They dined by candlelight on their private deck, sharing wine and watching the sunset paint the sky in impossible colors. Malik was the attentive husband every woman dreams of, constantly taking photos of Zahira, ordering her favorite foods, massaging her shoulders after long swimming sessions. Zahira found herself thinking that maybe this marriage would work after all. Maybe stability and kindness were better than passion and chaos. Maybe her mother had been right all along about what truly mattered in a relationship. Malik's devotion was almost overwhelming. He photographed everything: Zahira reading on the deck, Zahira in her swimming suit, Zahira laughing at dinner, Zahira sleeping. I want to remember every moment, he explained when she teased him about his constant camera work. You're so beautiful I can barely believe you're mine. That possessive word should have warned her. Mine. Not with me or my wife, mine. Like an object he owned. On the fifth evening, the resort's Wi-Fi system crashed during a tropical storm. The internet had been spotty all week, but this was a complete blackout. No Instagram, no email, no contact with the outside world. Most couples would have seen this as romantic, forced digital detox in paradise. Malik became agitated almost immediately. He'd been posting honeymoon photos constantly, showing off his beautiful new wife to friends and followers back home. The social media silence made him restless, pacing their villa like a caged animal. Let me cue up some music on your phone, he said around 9 p.m., when the Wi-Fi was still down. Mine's completely dead. Zahira handed over her device without thinking twice. Why would she hesitate? He was her husband now. They were supposed to share everything. But Malik wasn't familiar with her phone's interface. While navigating to her music app, he accidentally opened her voice message archive. And there, at the top of the saved messages, was Jalil's final communication. Little star, our time has ended. Forgive me. 8 seconds of audio that detonated their marriage like a bomb. If you're still here watching this unfold, comment the current timestamp. I need to know who stays for the hard truths, because what happened next will show you exactly how quickly love can turn into homicidal rage. The change in Malik was instantaneous and terrifying. His face went completely white, then flushed deep red. His hands started shaking. When he looked at Zahira, his eyes held an expression she'd never seen before, pure, murderous fury. Who is this? His voice was barely above a whisper, but somehow more frightening than if he'd been screaming. Zahira's blood froze. In her emotional devastation after the breakup, she'd saved Jalil's final message like some women save love letters, not because she wanted to hear it again, but because deleting it would make the relationship feel completely erased. It's nothing, she stammered. An old message. It doesn't matter now. She tried to explain about Jalil being in the past, about the message being months old, about how she'd chosen Malik and married him and was committed to their future together. But Malik wasn't listening to explanations. He was listening to that voice message on repeat, getting angrier with each playback. Resort guests in neighboring villas later reported hearing muffled shouting around 11 p.m. A man's voice tight with rage, a woman's voice pleading and crying. The argument continued for over an hour. When resort staff approached the villa the next morning to deliver breakfast, Zahira appeared with a swollen lip and bruising around her wrist. Malik stood behind her, all smiles and charm. She slipped on the balcony steps last night, he explained to the concerned server. You know how clumsy women can be when they've had wine with dinner. If this story is making you uncomfortable, good, that means you have a conscience. Subscribe if you want more stories that expose how quickly control can become violence, because recognizing these patterns could literally save someone's life. But the resort's CCTV cameras told a different story. Footage from the seaplane terminal showed Malik yanking Zahira's arm with enough force to lift her off her feet. She stumbled, tried to pull away, and he yanked harder. They left the Maldives 2 days early. Malik claiming a family emergency required their immediate return to Dubai. The honeymoon was over. The real horror was just beginning. The flight back to Dubai was 3 hours of complete silence. Zahira stared out the window while Malik sat rigid beside her, occasionally glancing at her with that same cold fury from the night before. When she tried to initiate conversation, he turned away. When she reached for his hand, he pulled back like she was contaminated. But instead of driving to their new apartment in Dubai Marina as planned, Malik took a different route entirely. They drove south through the desert for over an hour, past the city lights and into the empty wilderness beyond. Where are we going? Zahira asked, the first words either of them had spoken since leaving the airport. Qasr al-Sadr, Malik replied without looking at her. We need privacy to fix what you broke. Qasr al-Sadr was a luxury desert resort, the kind of place where celebrities and politicians went to disappear from public scrutiny. Private villas scattered across pristine desert landscape, each one isolated enough to provide complete privacy. The kind of privacy that could be romantic for couples who trusted each other. For couples who didn't, it was a trap. Their villa was stunning, traditional Arabic architecture with modern amenities, a private pool, and no neighbors within shouting distance. Under different circumstances, Zahira would have found it magical. Instead, she felt like she was being led into a beautiful prison. "I need to call my mother," she said as they unpacked. "Let her know we arrived safely." "Your phone stays with me," Malik replied, holding out his hand. "No outside contact until we resolve this." That's when Zahira realized the gravity of her situation. She was hours from Dubai, completely isolated, with a man whose personality had transformed overnight. The gentle, respectful husband from their engagement had vanished, replaced by someone she didn't recognize. How many of you have a friend like the one I'm about to tell you about? Someone who would drop everything to help you when you're in trouble? Tag them below because friends like this are rare and precious. On their second day at the desert resort, while Malik was showering, Zahira managed to retrieve her phone and call her closest friend, Samira Dallin. The conversation lasted less than 2 minutes, but it revealed everything about Zahira's mental state. "I think I made a mistake," she whispered into the phone. "He's not who I thought he was." "What do you mean?" Samira asked. "What happened on your honeymoon? He found something on my phone, an old voice message. Now he won't speak to me normally. He took my phone away, and he brought me to this desert place where no one can hear us." Samira immediately offered to come get her, to drive out to the resort and bring her home to Lebanon if necessary. But Zahira refused. "I can't create a scandal," she said. "My family would never recover from the shame if I left my husband after 1 week of marriage. I just need to find a way to calm him down, make him understand that the past is the past." That phone call probably saved investigators months of work later, because Samira immediately wrote down everything Zahira had said, including the name of the resort and her concerns about Malik's behavior. For 3 days, resort housekeeping found broken glass in their villa every morning. Water glasses, wine bottles, decorative vases, always cleaned up before staff arrived. But the evidence was unmistakable. The couple's interactions during meals were described by servers as stiff exchanges, polite words delivered with underlying tension that made everyone uncomfortable. Subscribe if you want to learn the warning signs that could save someone you love, because isolation is one of the most dangerous tactics abusers use to maintain control. Malik was systematically cutting Zahira off from everyone who might help her. No phone, no internet, no visitors, no way to leave since he controlled the car keys. He'd created the perfect environment for whatever he was planning next. On the third night, other guests reported hearing raised voices from Villa 14. Not the explosive argument from the Maldives, but something more controlled and more frightening. The sound of a man systematically breaking down a woman's resistance through psychological pressure. On the fourth night, the screaming started just after midnight. And this time, no one would walk away alive. The final confrontation began at 11:47 p.m. on their fourth night at Qasr Al Sadr. Resort security cameras captured Malik returning to Villa 14 after spending 2 hours at the hotel bar, drinking alone while staring at his phone. What investigators later discovered was that he'd been obsessively replaying Jalil's voice message, working himself into a rage that had been building for days. Zahira was in the villa's bathroom, preparing for bed, when Malik burst through the door. Guests in Villa 12, nearly 50 meters away, reported hearing his voice immediately, not shouting, but speaking in that controlled, deadly tone that somehow carried across the desert silence. "Tell me about him," Malik demanded. "Tell me about every time he touched you, every place you went together, every lie you told your family about where you were." For 3 days, he'd been asking these questions. For 3 days, Zahira had tried to explain that her past relationship was completely over, that she'd chosen marriage with him, that she was committed to building their future together. But Malik wasn't interested in forgiveness or moving forward. He wanted to punish her for having loved someone else first. The psychological torture had been escalating daily. Malik would wake her up at night to demand details about her time with Jalil. He'd refuse to let her eat until she answered his questions. He'd play Jalil's voice message on repeat, forcing her to listen to it while explaining exactly what those 8 seconds meant to her. By the 4th night, Zahira was exhausted, emotionally drained, and desperate to end the interrogation. When Malik started the same questioning routine again, she finally snapped. "Yes, I loved him," she screamed, according to witness reports. "Yes, it was real. But he's gone and I'm here with you. What more do you want from me?" That admission was exactly what Malik had been waiting for. Not because he wanted honesty, but because it gave him permission to do what he'd been planning all along. The guests in Villa 12 heard the first impact at 12:03 a.m., the sound of something heavy hitting the bathroom wall. Mrs. Elena Vasquez, a tourist from Spain, immediately woke her husband. "That sounded like someone falling," she whispered. What followed was 8 minutes of sounds that would haunt those witnesses forever. Crashes, thuds, a woman screaming for help, then pleading, then just sobbing. The audio was clear enough that guests could distinguish between different types of impacts: fists hitting flesh, objects being thrown, someone being dragged across the floor. Resort security received the first call at 12:07 a.m., but instead of rushing immediately to Villa 14, they followed protocol, calling the front desk, checking guest records, discussing whether to disturb high-paying customers over what might be a domestic dispute. If you're feeling angry right now about that delay, channel that energy. Hit subscribe and help me reach more people with these important stories, because every minute of delay in domestic violence situations can mean the difference between life and death. Security finally arrived at Villa 14 at 12:15 a.m., 8 crucial minutes after the first emergency call. They found Malik standing in the doorway, shirtless and sweating, his knuckles bloodied and his clothes torn. "My wife is sleeping," he told them calmly. "She had too much wine at dinner and became hysterical. I had to restrain her for her own safety." But the security team wasn't buying his explanation. The villa's interior was destroyed, furniture overturned, blood spatter on the walls, the bathroom mirror completely shattered. And despite Malik's claims that Zahira was sleeping peacefully, they could hear labored breathing coming from the bathroom. They demanded to see her immediately. What they found in that marble bathroom will forever be burned into their memories. Zahira was unconscious on the floor, her face so swollen that she was barely recognizable. Blood pooled around her head from impacts with the bathtub edge. Her wedding dress, the beautiful white gown she'd been wearing for their romantic desert getaway, was torn and stained with blood. The paramedics arrived within 12 minutes, but it was already too late. Zahira's brain injuries were too severe, her body too broken. She was rushed to Rashid Hospital in Dubai, where trauma surgeons fought for 2 hours to save her life. She died at 2:31 a.m. without regaining consciousness. The forensic examination revealed the full horror of what Malik had done. 43 separate injuries across her body. Evidence of multiple impact weapons, his fists, a bedside lamp, the bathroom fixtures themselves. The timeline reconstruction showed the attack had lasted nearly 8 minutes of sustained violence. But here's what sealed Malik's fate: the resort's security cameras. While he was claiming that Zahira had suffered some kind of accident or medical episode, CCTV footage showed him at 12:12 a.m. dragging a blood-spattered suitcase toward the service elevator. Inside that suitcase, investigators found Zahira's torn nightgown, towels soaked with bleach, and both of their mobile phones, evidence that Malik had tried to destroy immediately after the murder. Comment justice if you believe technology should be used to catch killers like this, because without those cameras and digital evidence, Malik might have gotten away with claiming this was an accident. The most damning evidence was still to come. Digital forensic specialists spent weeks recovering deleted files from both phones. And buried in the data they thought was permanently erased, they found the one piece of evidence that revealed the true motive for this brutal murder. Jalil's voice message. The 8-second recording that had started this whole nightmare. The blood-spattered suitcase that Malik dragged to the service elevator became the foundation of the prosecution's case. Inside, investigators found a carefully curated collection of evidence that Malik believed would never be discovered: Zahira's torn clothing, towels doused in industrial-strength bleach, and both of their mobile phones. But Malik had made a critical error. He assumed that deleting files and factory resetting devices would permanently destroy the evidence. He didn't understand that digital forensics technology had advanced far beyond simple file recovery. The Emirates Cybercrime Unit brought in specialists from 3 different countries to reconstruct the data from both phones. Using advanced recovery techniques, they were able to retrieve not just deleted messages and photos, but also metadata that revealed exactly when files had been accessed, saved, and deleted. The timeline they reconstructed was devastating for Malik's defense. At 11:52 p.m. on the night of the murder, just 11 minutes before the first neighbor complaint, Malik's phone showed activity in Zahira's voice message archive. He had been replaying Jalil's message repeatedly, each playback logged by the phone's operating system. But the most damning discovery was what they found in Zahira's deleted search history. In the hours before her death, she had been frantically researching divorce procedures in the UAE, women's shelters in Dubai, and emergency contact numbers for domestic violence hotlines. She knew she was in danger. She was planning to escape. The digital evidence also revealed the true extent of Malik's obsession with Zahira's past. Investigators recovered over 200 screenshots from social media accounts belonging to people in Jalil's circle, photos of parties Zahira might have attended, yachts she might have been on, events where they could have been together. Malik had been conducting his own investigation into his wife's former relationship, building a detailed timeline of her affair with meticulous, obsessive precision. He knew dates, locations, and even had copies of restaurant receipts from establishments where Zahira and Jalil had dined together. Comment digital truth if you believe technology is making it impossible for killers to hide their crimes, because this case proved that your phone knows everything about your real intentions. Meanwhile, UAE authorities faced a delicate situation with media coverage. Federal Decree Law No. 34 of 2021 strictly prohibited the publication of details involving royal family members without official approval. When news of the murder began circulating on social media, connecting the case to Jalil bin Arman, prosecutors moved quickly to control the narrative. Several Twitter users who posted speculation about royal involvement received hefty fines. Instagram accounts that shared photos of Zahira with unidentified men in luxury settings were suspended. The official media line remained consistent: a domestic incident involving private citizens. But social media operates beyond the direct control of any government, and the story continued spreading through encrypted messaging apps and private forums. International news outlets picked up fragments of the story, though they couldn't confirm the royal connection without access to court documents. Behind palace walls, the fallout was immediate and severe. Jalil was summoned for emergency meetings with his brother, the Emir. He confessed to the relationship with Zahira but insisted it had ended months before her marriage. He offered to testify in court if necessary, but palace lawyers determined that digital evidence would be sufficient without royal testimony. The Emir's solution was swift and final: indefinite exile. Jalil was given 72 hours to leave the Emirates and take up residence in London, where he could reflect on his choices away from local media attention. For a man who had spent his entire adult life in positions of cultural and political influence, exile was a form of living death. But it was preferable to the alternative: a public trial that could expose decades of royal family secrets. The investigation had taken just 6 weeks. The digital evidence was ironclad. Malik's lies had been systematically destroyed by technology he didn't understand. Now came the real test. Would justice prevail in a courtroom, or would tradition and politics determine the outcome? The Dubai Court of First Instance had never seen a case quite like this. When Malik ibn Rahman's trial began in September, the courtroom was packed with journalists, legal observers, and women's rights advocates who understood that this verdict would set a crucial precedent for domestic violence cases throughout the Emirates. Malik's defense team, led by one of Dubai's most expensive criminal lawyers, built their strategy around a single argument: provocation. They claimed that discovering his wife's secret affair had caused temporary insanity, that any reasonable man would have reacted with violence upon learning of such betrayal. "My client acted in a moment of overwhelming emotion," his lawyer argued during opening statements. "He discovered that his marriage was built on deception, that his wife had been intimate with another man, a member of the royal family, no less. The shock and humiliation drove him to actions he deeply regrets. This was the traditional honor-killing defense that had historically provided lenient sentences for men who murdered wives, daughters, or sisters accused of sexual impropriety. For decades, UAE courts had treated these crimes as understandable reactions to family dishonor. But the legal landscape had changed dramatically in 2020 with comprehensive criminal law reforms. Article 334, which had previously allowed reduced sentences for honor-based violence, was completely abolished. Murder was murder, regardless of the victim's alleged sexual behavior. The prosecution, led by a team of female attorneys, dismantled Malik's defense methodically. They presented the digital evidence showing his obsessive research into Zahira's past, proving premeditation rather than sudden passion. They played audio recordings of his interrogations where he calmly described planning to teach her a lesson about loyalty. But the most powerful moment came when they called Zahira's mother, Rania Al-Qayyim, to testify about the traditional diya settlement offer. In Islamic law, murder victims' families can accept financial compensation instead of pursuing criminal penalties. Malik's family had offered 3 million dirhams, approximately $800,000, for Rania to forgive her daughter's killer and request reduced sentencing. Rania's response silenced the entire courtroom. "My daughter is not a coin to be bartered," she declared, her voice steady despite tears streaming down her face. She was an architect, a dreamer, a woman with plans and hopes and talents that this man destroyed. "No amount of money will bring her back, and no amount of money will make me call her murder acceptable." The judge paused the proceedings for several minutes while the impact of her words settled over everyone present. Tell me in the comments, do you think Rania made the right choice? Should families be able to forgive killers in exchange for money, or does justice require punishment regardless of forgiveness? The defense team's final strategy was character assassination. They attempted to portray Zahira as a promiscuous woman who had deceived an honorable man, arguing that her secret affair justified Malik's emotional response. This approach backfired spectacularly. The prosecution presented evidence of Zahira's professional achievements, her architectural publications, testimonials from colleagues about her integrity and talent. They showed that she had never lied about her past. She simply hadn't volunteered information about a relationship that ended before her marriage. Zahira Al-Qayyim was not on trial here, the lead prosecutor stated in closing arguments. She cannot defend herself because the defendant murdered her. But we will not allow her memory to be murdered twice. The forensic evidence was overwhelming. 43 separate injuries. 8 minutes of sustained violence. Premeditated destruction of evidence. The CCTV footage showing Malik's calculated cleanup attempts. After deliberating for just 4 hours, the 3-judge panel returned with their verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. The sentence was the maximum allowed under UAE law: life imprisonment, formally 25 years, with the possibility of early release only if Zahira's family granted forgiveness. Given Rania's courtroom declaration, that forgiveness would never come. If Rania Al-Qayyim's courage inspired you, subscribe to support more stories about women who refuse to be silenced, because her decision to reject blood money changed how domestic violence cases are handled throughout the Emirates. The verdict sent shockwaves through traditional communities where honor killings had been quietly tolerated. Legal experts noted that this case established important precedent. No amount of alleged sexual impropriety justified murdering women. Women's rights organizations throughout the Gulf states celebrated the outcome as a turning point. But they also recognized that changing laws was easier than changing attitudes. Malik showed no emotion when the sentence was read. He was immediately transferred to Dubai Central Prison, where he remains today. Justice had prevailed, but at a cost that could never be repaid. The impact of Zahira's case extended far beyond a Dubai courtroom. Within 6 months of the verdict, the Dubai Foundation for Women and Children reported a 40% increase in calls to their domestic violence hotline, with many callers specifically mentioning Zahira's story as motivation to seek help. Women across the Emirates began sharing their own experiences with controlling partners, recognizing warning signs they had previously dismissed as normal relationship behavior. The case became a catalyst for conversations that had been whispered in private for generations. International women's rights organizations used Zahira's story to highlight the global nature of domestic violence, showing that wealth, education, and social status provided no protection against intimate partner violence. Her case was cited in UN reports about violence against women in the Middle East. But perhaps the most moving tribute came from Zahira's closest friend, Samira Dallin, on the first anniversary of the murder. Samira drove to Qasr al-Sadr Resort, where security guards initially refused her access to Villa 14. After explaining her connection to the case, they allowed her to approach the building where her friend had died. She left a single jasmine stem outside the villa door, jasmine being Zahira's favorite flower, the one she used to sketch in the margins of her architectural drawings. Later that evening, Samira posted one of Zahira's original sketches on Instagram. Two towers leaning toward each other, one fractured down the middle, the other casting protective shadows. The drawing was from Zahira's university portfolio, created years before she met either Jalil or Malik. Her caption read simply, "She built structures for others. None held space for her." That post went viral across the Arabic-speaking world, shared by architects, artists, and women who saw themselves in Zahira's story. It became a symbol of how women often spend their lives creating spaces for everyone except themselves. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your location in the comments and tell me if the story has changed how you'll recognize warning signs in relationships. Because Zahira's legacy needs to be education, not just tragedy. Today, nearly 3 years after the murder, the key players in this story occupy very different worlds. Malik ibn Rahman remains in Dubai Central Prison, serving his life sentence. Prison records show he has received no visitors since his conviction. His family disowned him completely after the trial, unable to bear the shame of his actions. Jalil bin Arman continues his exile in London, working as a private art consultant under an assumed name. He has never granted interviews about his relationship with Zahira or the aftermath of her murder. Those who know him describe a man haunted by survivor's guilt. Zahira's mother, Rania, moved back to their mountain village in Lebanon, where she keeps her daughter's passport in a kitchen drawer. The pages are yellowing now, but she can't bring herself to throw it away. It still has stamps from her dreams, she tells visitors. If you've made it this far in the story, you're part of something important. You're refusing to let Zahira's death be meaningless. Comment, "Still here," to show me you understand that stories like this aren't entertainment. They're education that could save lives. The architectural sketches Zahira left behind have been compiled into a memorial book, with proceeds supporting domestic violence prevention programs throughout the Middle East. She wanted to build a better world. In death, she's still doing exactly that. Zahira's story teaches us brutal lessons that every woman needs to understand, and every man needs to acknowledge. First, isolation is never romantic. When someone wants to cut you off from friends, family, and support systems, that's not love, that's control. Malik didn't take Zahira to that desert resort for privacy. He took her there to eliminate witnesses. Second, your past relationships are not crimes requiring punishment. Zahira had every right to her history with Jalil. The shame belonged to the men who made her feel she had to hide her experiences, not to her for having lived them. Third, technology saves lives. The digital evidence that convicted Malik proves that abusers can no longer rely on she said scenarios. Your phone remembers everything. Use that knowledge to protect yourself and document threats. Fourth, legal reform matters. Zahira's case succeeded because UAE lawmakers had already abolished honor-killing defenses. Without those changes, Malik might have received a reduced sentence for defending family honor. Most importantly, trust your instincts. When Zahira called Samira from that desert resort saying she was afraid, her gut was telling her the truth. Don't ignore that voice inside you that says something is wrong. If someone you know is showing signs of controlling behavior, monitoring phones, isolating partners, explosive jealousy about the past, reach out. Be the Samira in their life. Thank you for watching this difficult but important story. Your engagement helps these cases reach people who need to hear them. Please hit that like button, subscribe to this channel for more true crime content that matters, and ring the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Share this video with someone who needs to understand these warning signs. Comment below with your thoughts about how we can better protect women like Zahira. Remember, Zahira wanted to build structures that would last forever. The best way to honor her memory is to build a world where her story never happens again. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and keep building something better.